Hello and welcome. It is Standard Super League time. I'm Randy Bueller, joined by Luis Scott Vargas and special guest for this pregame, Andrew Cuneo. So
Well,
normally we bring on whoever had the recent finish, top eight at the Grand Prix, something like that. So I do have to congratulate Luis. Nice job last weekend.
Thanks. I wasn't super optimistic after going 7-2, but I managed to 6-0 the draft and then 0-1 the top eight draft. But still, made top eight.
It was a tough spot. Yeah, nice weekend. But I knew we were going to have you anyway, so I wanted to bring Andrew in. And Andrew, I don't know how many people noticed this, but you clinched platinum this weekend, right?
yes, I squeaked over the finish line.
That's awesome. I know
Yeah,
that now, so put this Grand Prix in perspective. I know you were 9-0. I think you were 10-0 at one point, right?
yes. Okay.
So you were 10-0 at one point. I know you had dreams of top eight, winning the Grand Prix, but you did manage to get the 12-3 you needed for the pro points for platinum. Does that go as a successful weekend, or is that a disappointing finish? Or, I mean, how do you feel about a weekend like that?
It certainly was my goal going into it, but once I was 10-0, it was pretty disappointing. I had my first drafts, it was awkward because I practiced drafting a lot and I didn't get to use any of that in the drafts at the GP. My first
The,
draft, I just had a very forced green-white seat and my deck was good. I went 2-1, which is, a decent result for a good draft deck. Then my next draft was just a mess. Like I wound up in a blue black deck, but got very few good cards, and it wasn't clear that there was a better deck for my seat. Even it just the packs broke really badly for me, so it was a struggle to get the win I needed with that.
Now, what's the strategy that you were hoping to be able to unveil? I know we talked about this at a previous Grand Prix. You've done a lot of drafting in this format, yeah?
Yeah, I wanted to. Well, I liked the same good decks that just about everybody liked, but at the GP, I think Luis said this about the top eight draft that just everyone was fighting for black and red basically, because they're clearly the best colors. Uh, so I had worked on drafting sort of like a red blue controlish deck where you could wind up playing three colors a lot of the time, and just whatever good red or black cards you picked up early on, you could kind of fit them into a blue control deck. And a lot of the cards that make that deck work go pretty late, but I sort of tried to slide into that in my second draft, and I just didn't see enough good cards to make my deck functional, really.
you didn't see enough tapestries of the ages or
Well,
the.
I had a Tapestry of the Ages, but unfortunately, so many of my picks were creatures that I couldn't even play it. Like my deck was just a very mediocre blue black kind of normal looking deck that was not very exciting or very good.
Yeah, I just know you and Owen were very high on that card going into the Grand Prix, or at least that's what it seemed like.
Well, I'm high on it in that, unlike most people who think you should just never play with it, I actually think it's a perfectly reasonable card to put in a deck that's got like 12-ish spells. And it me there are very few cards in that format that allow you to win when you flood out. So like a lot of the ways the games play out is both people kind of play their opening hands. There's a lot of trading that happens, and then either like if one person just has a great rare that goes unanswered, it wins. But if person has removal or neither person has a great rare, it just turns into kind of a top deck war where one person floods out and loses, and the Tapestry wins those games. So.
Fair enough. Let's change the subject to standard. Meanwhile, now you've brought some spice to this tournament so far. A couple of super spicy brews, but I know this week you're a little more of a return to what people may be expected from you before the tournament started. What's your thinking there in terms of deck selection?
Uh, Part of it is this is the exact list I played at Grand Prix Toronto, and I was disappointed with how I did at that tournament, so I wanted to give the deck one more shot. I think that part of the reason I did badly in Toronto was that people at the GP at least were really prepared to play against control decks. Like I played against Esper Dragon's deck that had multiple main deck Ashioks. I played against people who had main deck Stubborn Denial. I think that with the decks that have been being played in the standard Super League, there's going to be less of that. I don't think anybody played a control deck last week. Paul's the only
Basically
one who's
true.
played control at all, I'm pretty sure.
Now, this is. Go ahead, Luis.
I was just gonna. There have been way less dig through times than I would have expected going in. So we'll see if that remains true after this week.
Now, this is pretty close to the deck you played at the Pro Tour too. If you guys haven't seen it out there, it's blue-white control, right? It is. This is not an Esper Dragons list. It's not even an Esper list. There's no black mana, and there's only a couple of Ojutais. We can actually throw the deck list up. Elspeth is, I think, the key card that draws you into this take on control. Is that right?
Yes, Elspeth's the payoff for choosing to be blue-white, basically.
And you don't think Silumgar Scorn is what you need? You're just dissolves and negates and nullifies, and that's good enough?
I think Silumgar Scorn, the card is great, but the things it does to the rest of your deck are not that great. I think that having to feel like you have to play 5 dragons, there's a very real cost to that, because it means that people have a pretty easy angle to attack your deck. You're weak to edict effects. You're kind of weak to being Thoughtseize too, because they can either take your dragon and leave you with a useless Scorn, or they can see that you don't have any dragons to go with the Scorn and play around it. It's a good approach, but I don't think it's an approach that actually holds up very well when people are expecting it.
Okay.
Elspeth's just more robust. It's almost impossible for people to even get a 1-for-1 off of Elspeth.
Yeah, I think Elspeth is actually one of the ways that you can beat the decks that are trying to beat the other control deck, because people are playing all these like Death Mist Raptors to try to beat Elspeth, and Elspeth just destroys Death Mist Raptor. Not literally, but putting all the tokens into play makes it pretty hard for those decks to win. So yeah, there's a lot of strength in that. Also, I played a lot with the Esper Dragons deck, and for a deck full of not very many creatures and hexproof ones, you do end up caring about their heroes' downfalls a lot more than I would want to, or even they're just like edict effects or other random removal spells. It is kind of annoying that you do have to deal with that, and this build gets around that a little bit more.
Yeah.
I also want to see you run back the play you did at Grand Prix Denver, which was +1 Elspeth, and in response activate your Perilous Vault, which is, I don't think, a completely unusual play.
That's a play I have done quite a lot, actually, in testing and in playing with this deck at various tournaments.
How good has the Narset been for you so far?
Not great. I kind of put it in my deck just to continue to give it a try. I tested it a fair amount before the Pro Tour and sort of decided it was about as good as playing with Jace's Ingenuity, which is a playable card, but not great. I put it in my deck for the GP, both because Reed told me he thought it was pretty good, and also because I wanted a card that I think it's not great in control matchups, but it's good enough, because I wanted more proactive plays I could make.
Do you think it's better or worse in this deck than in Limited?
It's definitely better in this deck than in Limited. I played with it a bunch in Limited after telling everyone on my team before the Pro Tour, don't ever pick it, don't ever put it in your deck. And it's not quite that bad in Limited, but that's a reasonable approximation, really. It's almost impossible to have a good Narset deck in Limited.
So you're skeptical about this deck, but wanted to give it one more try, or this is just where you think control decks are actually supposed to be in Standard right now?
It's a little bit hard to say. This deck, I think, is a better control deck to be playing if you're worried about people fighting you with like Master of the Unseen and Death Mist Raptor. It also has the mana base is just better than if you're playing the Esper Dragons deck, but it does have some weaknesses. Like if Ashiok winds up being a card I have to play against a lot, I'll probably lose.
But I guess the way the Standard Super League metagame has been going anyway, not a ton of those decks floating around.
Yes, I would not have, if I thought Jerry was going to be playing blue-black with just Ashioks as his win condition, I would not have chosen this.
What do you think Jerry is playing?
I'm going to guess he's playing some sort of Sultai Whip deck. I think that's what he likes to play the most in Standard now, but really, it could be anything. So.
Fair enough. Well, I know that we're just a couple minutes from the top of the hour. We are going to start on your match against Jerry, so we get to see this deck in action. Luis, I don't know if you have any more questions for Andrew before we let him go get ready to play.
No, I mean, I'm excited to see this deck play out. I mean, it's like a lot of the decks I've seen you play before, but I do like these kinds of decks, and I find it kind of exciting that there might be another good control deck. I mean, having one already is awesome, but having a second one, especially one that's trying to take advantage of how people interact with the first one, that's pretty cool, and I want to see if that works out.
All right.
All right, fair enough. Thanks for hanging out, Andrew. We'll let you go get set up for your match against Jerry.
Sure.
I guess we can put the bracket on the screen while we let Andrew go away.
All right.
Show you guys what we got coming up today. There you see Jerry versus Andrew kind of in the middle of the bracket. The winner of that match will be taking on either Paul Cheon or Brad Nelson. We are going to hold the match between Brian Kibler and Owen Turtenwald. So they're going to play their match after we finish watching Andrew and Jerry. We'll be able to get coverage of at least those two first-round matches. And then Tom and Josh will be off playing off camera, essentially. Anything in particular you're looking forward to this week, Luis?
I kind of want to see how Paul Cheon's deck plays out. He's got another pretty interesting one, and then he's playing a Jeskai Dragons deck. So it's like the Esper Dragons deck, but with red cards instead of black cards, which gives you more, I think most importantly, Anger of the Gods to, again, beat those Death Mist Raptor decks that try to beat you with, Den Protector and Death Mist Raptor.
Right, so he's all the way on Silumgar Scorn and what, 5-ish dragons? He's just have 4 Ojutais?
Actually, just the 4 Ojutais. Those are the only dragons. So that's another thing I'm curious about is, does that work out when you're that dragon light? But he does have also the Elspeths again. So again, he's going back to a heavier white. A heavier white complement. This is more of a 3-color deck than the Esper deck is. The Esper deck's really a 2-color deck splash Ojutai. This is a solid 3-color deck, so I want to see how that works out.
Well, he get a pretty real test in the first round. Brad Nelson is playing Abzan Aggro. I mean, that is seems to be arguably the best deck in the standard right now, or at least the rock, sort of the first deck you need to test against if you want to feel like your deck is viable.
Yeah, Abzan Aggro just has all good cards. It doesn't have any really truly horrendous matchups. It's just the fact that you have Thoughtseize, good removal spells, and good pressure means that it's really hard to be a huge underdog against anything. Jerry won the Magic Online Championship qualifier on Sunday, or Saturday for that, so he's going to the Magic Online Championships. This deck just always does well at Grand Prix, so I'm not surprised to see Brad play that. He just top 8 at a Grand Prix with it.
Yeah, Brad top 8 at the Grand Prix. Jerry won the box, which is super huge, big deal. Congratulations, Jerry. We should look at what Jerry's running though against Andrew. Mixing it up a little bit here. I picked the name for this deck. I wasn't sure exactly what to call it. I mean, it's clearly Jeskai colored. It's back towards sort of Mantis Rider is not a card we've seen a lot of lately, and it's not super aggressive, but it's not super control-ish either. I don't know. I'm interested to see how this plays out.
Yeah, this is basically Jeskai mid-range from the beginning of the season from, Pro Tour cons.
Right.
And, I think the deck is still good. It actually looks very good against control decks. I think Jerry built this thinking Andrew might actually go back to his controller's roots because, main deck Stratus Dancers, Ashcloud Phoenix, which is generally pretty good against removal, though Andrew is playing white removal, which tends to have a little bit better of a shot. But then, a bunch of burn spells, main deck Disdainful Stroke, I would expect Jerry to be ahead here.
All right, well, looks like it's time to go to the match. So let's see what happens. Match number 1.